This is why you see why I don't have a schedule, because it's got to kind of fit everything in, and I can't be tied down to these times and schedules, because everybody will get offended, and their schedule will be off because I let them down. See, there's the obligation thing.
Hello and welcome. Campbell here from Spiral Up. Hope you're having a fantastic day. And today we have JCK with us. Yay! First time on Spiral Up.
Yay!
So thanks for joining us. JC, how are you?
I'm great. It's good to see you in your rainforest background, and you're even sweating. So you're part of the. It's all part of the background.
I wish I could jump in that waterfall.
Hot and steamy.
It is. Yeah. It is. It's 36 and over for the last 2 weeks, and our air conditioning broke about 2 weeks ago, and
oh no,
haven't been able to get anyone in to fix it. So I've still got another 3 days. So interesting, but that's right. I've got a nice healthy glow, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. So
good to talk to you.
We thought we'd have a chat. Well, I wanted to chat about obligation. I saw you did a video, and obviously you've mentioned it more than once. And this thing about obligation is, the way I see it, it's it ties people to the old system, to the old age, the old way of doing things, because that's all of this, all that part. That's all the old way now. That's all in the past. And people, obviously, if they're anchored to that, they find it really hard to go forward. And that becomes under obligation, that they feel like they have to go to work because they have to get money to pay their mortgages, to buy their food, to pay their bills, and all this kind of stuff. And we know what obligation feels like. It's not a good feeling when you have to do something and you don't want to do it. It's not fun.
Yeah. I've been fighting obligation my whole life, and I always thought something was wrong with me, because I realize now in my 40s, I'm 45, finally worked out that I just don't fit into that system of the schedule, the obligation, the 9 to 5, whatever society has told us to do, to be the good person and to be the dutiful citizen. I just don't fit in with that. And what I found was, the minute I broke away from the obligation that tied me to my family, to my social circles, and to my friends, my family, and all of the things that were binding me to what was acceptable in society, the minute I said, fuck this, and I broke away in mid-2020, I started my Facebook group, and that's what made me really speak my truth, because the minute I said I've got nothing to lose now, and I'm not going to do anything out of obligation for anyone, or say anything or participate in anything out of obligation to be the good girl and not rock the boat. The minute I did that, everything opened up. And I think that I literally have a belief that doing things out of obligation blocks our intuition. It blocks us from trusting our truth, our true soul purpose, and it makes us question that higher self, or that questioning that we have. That's our rudder. Okay, so our rudder in life is our soul and our soul purpose, and we come in here with a veil on, right, so that we can't remember what we came in with as spirits, coming into this existence. But the soul and that little voice and that feeling, those nudges, that's that's kind of like our soul purpose that we've come in here to do, the lessons that we're meant to do. And that is the voice of intuition that we have. And when we do things out of obligation, as society expects us to do them, and we do things because our parents will be proud of us, because it's the right way to do it, because we're expected to be married by a certain age, or we're expected to have children, we're expected to have a mortgage, we're expected to do X, Y, and Z. When we're ignoring our real self, let's say our soul is saying, actually, you came here on earth to really live the life of a monk, or to go and to go and just have a spiritual quest and not own anything. Right. So how many times have you heard that story that someone's had, 3 houses and whatever, and then they just left it all and went and pursued a spiritual life because that's what their soul was telling them to do. And it's when they reject that obligation to society, that's usually when magic happens. That's what I believe anyway. And that's pretty much why I'm now telling people that when we, to let that go. And this is when our society will change,
Yeah,
Did I sum it up?
Yeah, you
that's
did.
it.
Oh,
That's the show.
That's it, right? Joining us. Yeah, I mean, it's the but, isn't it, right? Oh, I'd love to do that, but I've got to go to work, but I've got to do this, but I've got which is really people saying, oh, I'd love to live my life, but I can't because I've got obligation. And we also have this, this concept and sayings from the Bible and everything that, basically it's all about having, lightening the load and to enter heaven, you have to sort of, be like a child, and you can't have attachment. You have to let everything go to go forward. Like we get told this, through all the different, religious and theosophical books and everything. It's always about letting go, because it's the strings that bind us, right? Literally, it's just like holding a string. You're walking along and you're towing this thing and you're attached to it, and that's the obligation. But if we're pulling 100 things, it's pretty hard to go forward and go fast and all that. But you let go of it and off you go, right?
But it's also a delicate balancing act, because now I say I don't do anything out of obligation. I mean, try and pin me down for an interview, bloody hell. I'm just like
4 weeks.
I want to do it today. I don't have a schedule. It took 4 weeks. Yeah. I don't have a schedule, like even scheduling a schedule, I can't. I'm like, oh, I have to do it through intuition. I can't. I just got to feel it. Because I don't know how I feel on the day, whether or not I can do it. And I understand that there are normal societal obligations because other people are relying on you. And that's really, it's a very delicate balancing act. We're not saying go and just, let people down when you're saying you're not going to do things out of obligation anymore. But really the voice that we've been trained from, I come from a Mediterranean background. Now, if anyone out there is Italian, Greek, Turkish, Lebanese, anyone from Mediterranean cultures or European cultures, you will know this. We are taught, obligation to, what others will think of us it's a huge thing, right? You visit people even if you hate them. You visit them because it's the right thing to do. You pay your respects because it's the right thing to do. You call that person because it's the right thing to do. You turn up at church because it's the right thing to do. Everybody's stifling what they really want to do because the society and what that group or that culture is expecting is more important than what the self is wanting, right? And that's basically what that comes down to. And to have to break away from that was a big thing for me. I was always very different than the rest of my family. I don't really come from a very traditional upbringing anyway, but I was always just doing my own thing. I was like the black sheep. But there was always that guilt of, they're expecting me to come over because so-and-so is coming over. And if I don't do it, I'm the bad girl. And what are they going to say about me? But, literally, I think the biggest blessing that ever happened was this bloody coronavirus bullshit, okay? Because then everyone was like forced to stay home, couldn't visit anyone anyway. And then you literally were shown who were the people that were following the crowd and who were the people going their own way. And if you ended up saying, well, actually, I don't want to come over, you're just one of those people who's not going to follow the crowd, right? So it kind of was a blessing, because then I was, I could use that as this excuse as, well, actually, I didn't come over for Christmas because, blah, 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 X, Y, and Z, because of coronavirus, but those sorts of things are massive, massive. And guilt is such a huge thing that is keeping us masked up. It's making people put things in their body that you wouldn't, like, Jesus, question this narrative. They won't do it because the pressure to follow what they're obligated to do by society is so huge that they will even put their life at risk. It's a massive thing. Yeah. I did something most people would not do. I mean, I'm sure there's heaps of people in this audience that would do it, but I mean, I basically cancelled Christmas in 2021. I just was like, nah, not going to do it. And I've got a little kid, and little kids, it's all about Christmas, for little kids. And all I did was I celebrated it earlier for her, like did something for her and her father, and she got her presents. And then the following week at Christmas, I went and stayed by myself in a tiny home off grid and just did my own thing. And that is the ultimate, no obligation thing, right? That's like, because it goes against everything society expects you. And Jesus, my mum she was like, what? You're not coming at Christmas? And I'm like, nah. Nope, no Christmas for me. And I just stood in my truth, and I just kept saying, I am really stressed out. This is the only time I will get. You've asked me to get a bloody PCR test to come there for Christmas. I'm not doing it. I stood in my truth, and I just kept saying no. And I urge people, I think, if you keep thinking that you can't do something because everybody's expecting you to do it, just try and stand up to them and see what happens. What's the worst that can happen? You feel guilty for a bit, and then it goes away, and everyone shuts up and just puts up with it because it's your decision. And when you stand in that, what else are they going to do, right?
Yeah.
That's how I see it.
And family is such a huge...
It takes a lot of balls to do it, though.
It does. Family, they're all, it's an instilled lifetime thing as well with family. It's like it's happened every year, and it's like it's a lot harder to break away from that obligation. But I'm the same. We didn't do Christmas this year, and I've never ever done the Hallmark stuff or anything. And people just don't get it. What do you mean you're not doing it? But everyone does it. And then we end up, like you said, in a position like we are now, where everyone's doing it because they think everyone's doing it, without thinking about the consequences. And this is war as well, right? I was looking into sort of the Great White Fleet and World War I especially, right? There was the obligation of young men to go and kill people they don't know or get killed for the country, right?
And those who wouldn't do it, they would be bullied. About the chicken feather. Do you know about the chicken feather thing, right? Oh. So they would get women would go up. Okay, so those who were, I think this might be before conscription, but those who didn't go to war for one reason or another, and they were just young men walking around and not in soldiers' gear, the women, they would have groups of women with chicken feathers, and they would go up to the men and pin chicken feathers like you're a chicken, for not going to war, to humiliate them in public. Wow. For not joining the war effort. And, you wouldn't know why that person didn't enlist and didn't, this was World War I. So that was something that was, it goes back to tribal stuff, doesn't it? It goes back to that.
Yeah, yeah.
We had, to be booted out of the tribe meant certain death, in early cultures, because you then have to fend for yourself. You don't have the society around you. You don't have that comfort. You don't have, you needed a tribe around you to be able to survive. And that still it's in us, and they know this. And those who do social engineering know this, and they play on that. And the whole Tavistock Institute is all about studying what are these social things. How can we get society to do what we want? And they've realised that the biggest thing is societal pressure on each other. And this is exactly what they've done with this virus, is that they expected, all they had to do was write these mandates that were not law, and then just let the people police it.
Yeah.
That's basically what they've done. That's how they did it, right?
Yep.
Because look at any ad campaign. I think there's something like, if you know anything about marketing and PR and stuff like that, you can run an ad campaign ad nauseum, so to speak, for months and months and months, and hammer it home, and you will only ever get, I think, maximum 30% compliance to the ad. So like as in 30% engagement with that product, okay? That's maximum. That they know this. They know that if they hammer it home, bang, 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 the most you'll ever get is 30%, okay? So when they're saying that 97% have been jabbed, come on. No.
That's just funny.
But what they did was they put the idea that everyone's doing it. And then you've got obligation. Everyone goes, oh, well, if everyone's doing it, then I guess I better do it, right? That's where the higher number, I think that's probably where they got a slightly higher number than 30%. I mean, maybe 50 or 60%, but nobody talks about it.
Yeah.
Because why? Because, you know.
Yeah, I agree. That's the biggest scam. Everyone else is doing it. Look, 80%. Well, you're not. You haven't had it. Oh my God. And then, I mean, and we've heard with, you know, Trudy Castro, right? What's his name? Justin Castro.
Karen Castro. Did you see that picture of? I'd like to complain to the manager of trucks, please.
Yeah. These people, it's so pathetic. But everything he said, he's come out and it's always like obligation, hasn't it? And shame based. It's like, we as Canadians, or we as, you know, peace-loving Canadians, we do this. We don't park our trucks in the street, and it's all this big shame thing. But the funny thing that's happening there is everyone's just laughing at him, because, you know, everyone's kind of at this point where they've got no obligation to some idiot who's up there yelling at us, and he's clearly not, you know, a Canadian. They don't care anymore. So I think this obligation thing is starting to drop. People are starting to see through it. It's a massive thing, isn't it? I mean, I think even just the jobs, this whole, you know, people still think it'll go back to normal, right? And so they think that their obligation to their family, you know, especially for males, I guess, but both these days, is got to keep working, right? They've got to make money, because that's how you provide. But clearly, that's not how you provide anymore. You know, that's how you get trapped. So people are just scared to let go of that stress and see what happens, aren't they?
That's the question that's the biggest, you know, conundrum that most people have been under. But this is how you change society on a mass level: is how do you change this structure that's been around for decades, you know, where you know, you work hard, and then you retire, and then you die, you know, that kind of thing. And like, we've got to keep the family together, and we've got to do all of this, and just got to do what's right. And we hate our job, but we still got to do it, because out of obligation, we've got to do it. And how do you break that, you know, on a mass scale? You put this kind of massive spiritual conundrum, you know, this questioning of, is this worth it, right? That's how you change it, and you shift it. And then people start to find their own inner power to be able to unlock that thing within them, to become more resourceful and to not fit into the old paradigm, and to change that. And I was going to say something about, and I forgot, in regards to not work, but I lost it. It was really good. I can assure you it was a really good point, but that's okay. It'll come back.
Yeah. I was going to make the distinction that, you know, obviously there's more than one type of obligation. There's obligation that's put on you, you know, by society and family and all this kind of stuff. You must comply, or you're against us. And that's obviously not good. But, you know, obligation to yourself, I think that's another type, which is good. You know, if you know, like you were talking about before, if you do say you're going to do something, well, you need to do it, or else you don't say you're going to do it. That's the obligation, and that's your word, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, you become, you know, a liar.
Yes. I mean, I have a kind of like a silent obligation to the audience. Nobody's making me do this. I don't have a boss that's telling me to do this. Well, I do kind of, but I just feel that obligation to the audience, and that's a slightly different thing. It's not, it's a slightly different thing, and I don't know if it's called an obligation, but it's a duty in a way. And it's more because I feel the need for, the need. I can see it, people writing to me every day, you changed my life, by speaking up about this, or I was going to commit suicide and then I watched your video. And then, when you get stuff like that, I've had that countless times of people telling me I've saved their life, or I made them finally get therapy because they, I was brave enough to talk about my own trauma that happened, when I was a kid. And so this is all extremely, that's a good obligation, I guess you could say. And I guess that's how I guess people are leveraging, the reasoning behind why they're doing certain things. They really believe, and this is where that virtue signaling comes in, right? When you were at university, I'm sure you probably were in the same sort of crowds I was. I came from an fine arts and design and theatre background. And we've got, I look back and I go, wow, I would have been one of those woke people if I stuck with that, because we were into the, just the vote for the Labor Party or Greens, and then the environmentalism, and everything was about, never, ever offending anyone, ever, speaking the right language and making sure you're inclusive and all of that. And these people are the biggest mask wearing, jab taking, virtue signaling pieces of shit out there at the moment. They're the ones doing most of this. They're the ones calling out or ringing, oh, my neighbour's having a party and, I think there's 6 people instead of 5, according to, so they're the ones dobbing on their neighbours. These are the virtue signalling people. What makes them, we're talking about supposed left-wing, or lefties, and lefties were always considered, used to be, they're very open-minded, inclusive kind of people, and yet they're the ones sticking to the rules the most. Yep. My mum recycles straws. Okay, she recycles everything is recycled. Oh, yeah, you look after the environment. I go, Mum, climate change is bullshit. Climate change is bullshit. I can't believe you. But the ABC said that, no, you've got to. You do. And I'm like, Mum, just throw it in the bin. Like, they throw it in the bin anyway. It's not true. And she's like, oh my God, you and your brother, oh my God, and it's just, and this is all because they believe they're doing the good, pat on the back, the virtue signaling. I know, and I remember, all of thank God I'm not on Facebook anymore, but when, I got banned back in 2020, but back when I was on Facebook, it was all virtue signaling, like, we just got our first jab, or every time they did something that was, society was going to give them a pat on the back, and that's kind of goes hand in hand with all of this. Doing things out of obligation. It's about fitting in and doing exactly what society expects us to do, right?
Yeah. Look how much of a robot I am. Look how much of a good little slave I am. I'm doing exactly what they tell me. And this whole thing with, the lefties, it's such a good point, because, basically that they came out of the hippies, right? That they were the next generation after the hippies. Which was the what was supposed to be the hippies.
That's a Tavistock thing too. Yeah, Jesus, exactly. Feminists, all of it's all fake.
And then, but they were supposed to be the ones who were going to be free, living on the land, doing all this stuff, without rule and that, and they're the most compliant ones. Which, it's funny how they twist that, isn't it? They take them from don't judge, right, to basically judge everyone that you think is judging. It's weird, isn't it, that they completely flip the script on that.
And they've taken the narrative of so many things. They've
it's
taken the narrative of gender diversity. They've taken the narrative of feminism. They've taken the narrative of everything that came with a positive intent, and they took it. And how did they invert it? They did it through the obligation, the whole clause of obligation. I believe that's pretty much, they played that card of getting people to police each other through that natural, societal, tribal, ancient, thing that's in us to sort of help each other out and stick to the rules, I think that's what that comes down to, isn't it?
It's totally, when you look at COVID, it's totally that, isn't it? Because in a tribe, it's like if you're not pulling your weight, well, you're going to put other members at risk, right? If you're not hunting animals or you're not starting the fire or getting the wood or whatever you're supposed to do, then you're going to literally put the rest of it. That's why they kick you out. It's like, well, we're not dragging you, we're not carrying your weight, so bugger off. It's the same as what we said.
I just had a vision of a tribal, like a fur mask made out of like deer skin or something. Yeah, exactly. Bear skin.
2 of those bits of bark on your face. But that's the same thing, right? It's like, if we haven't had, the juice, oh, you're going to kill us. You're going to kill us. And it's the same tribe. It's just a bigger tribe. Oh, you're not doing what we're told, so you're going to kill us. So we have to kick you out and shame you and rah. But it's definitely, I think that's a really good point. It's just tribal law that they're throwing at us.
It is, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's that whole going along to get along, right? That's the notion. It's going along to get along. And I just think that, I used to do that when I was, so I used to be a vegan, all right? And now I'm not. And I used to be a vegan, and my God, the virtue signaling was to the max. And any chance you get, you got to tell people about how good you are, because I'm not killing it. I'm not one of those. I'm not one of those that kills animals, right? And listen, I'm not saying anything about vegans. Good on you. Good for you. Call me in 4 years. Let's see how you feel. But there was a guy who was in the plant-based movement, and I loved him. And he was this psychologist, and him and another guy wrote a book called The Pleasure Trap. And they sort of talk about how, the whole reason why society is overweight and all of this stuff and things like that. And one of Doug Lyle is his name, Doug Lyle, great guy, talks about psychology and the whole archaeological, like the whole, our ancestors and things like that, and how all of that fits in, right? And he was talking about, following a diet like a plant-based or a vegan diet, and how do you explain this to people that you're not eating? And he basically tells them to go along to get along, right? To not rock the boat, and to basically just to to keep the peace. Let's just not rock the boat. And that's okay, I guess, in some ways. But when it comes down to standing up for what you believe in, I guess you've got to kind of really do that and not stay silent. So I guess we kind of got to pick our arguments, really, isn't it? So do you think people just do things out of obligation because it's just all about what other people think? That's what it comes down to, basically, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just excuse me.
Diet's a big one. Right? Once you go and make that announcement, I'm a vegan or I'm a vegetarian or I'm a whatever, it's very hard to back away from that, isn't it? Because it's an obligation thing. What will people think? I'm this, and you built this startup, and then I guess the question is, who do we want to be obliged to, right?
Yeah. It was harder for me to come out as a carnivore than it was to be vegan. I'm serious. To say, yeah. I had an Instagram before I got banned. I had an Instagram account called The Closet Carnivore, and I was the closet carnivore because I'd been talking about veganism, and then I got sorry, I don't mean to take it off into that direction in this conversation, but I ended up getting inflammatory bowel disease, as a result of all that fiber and all that. Yeah, it was awful. And the only thing that healed me was carnivore, was like having a carnivore diet. So I had to keep that quiet because I was a big mouth before with a vegan. I was like, fucking Jesus. So now I've got to tell everyone that I'm actually not. And, but yeah, so basically, what other people think is the key in all of this, because, and I know this for a fact, that it's a superpower when you stop worrying about what other people think. And for myself, like putting myself out there on the line, that was the first thing. I didn't care anymore. That was why I did my first videos. I talked about something that was very, like, a bit freaky, like I was going to tell people, hey, everybody, there's some demons underground. And I just saw them in astral journey I did, and now I put this video out, and what are people going to think about that? Well, at that point, I didn't care anymore because I felt like I'd lost everyone anyway. And I felt like nobody was believing anything I'd said. My ex-husband was like, just throwing me under the bus every 5 seconds on social media. Every time I'd try to speak out in my, with what was going on in the world, with my family and friends, nobody wanted to listen. And I thought, you know what, fuck this. And I didn't care anymore. And I didn't want to be silenced anymore. And I think that once you get to that point where you've got nothing to lose, it's a pretty big deal. So what they're doing now to make people comply is they tell you, you've got a lot to lose because we're going to take your job away. We're going to take your right to go travel away. We're going to take your right to go do this away. We're going to take your right to go to the shops away. You're not allowed to do this, this, and this. And the more, and so they're sort of making you, they're squeezing you into this little box to say you've got everything to lose if you don't comply. And depending on how strong you are as a person or how sovereign you are as a person to create your own world and your own ways of getting through this, you will either buckle under the pressure or you will say, fuck this, and go your own way, right?
Yeah.
And that's where the split happens. Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean,
and that's where, yeah.
It's almost, again, like there's two, different types of people down here. Because when I hear that kind of stuff, like my instant reaction is, don't tell me what to do. I'm going to do the exact opposite just to annoy you. Go and F yourself. Yeah. And that's always just my whole life. That's been how I react. But some other people, most other people, right? They're just like, oh, no, but the news, but everyone else, we have to do this and rah, rah, rah. So I think it's down to this, is there more than one, type of being down here? I guess it's all in the starseed kind of story and the split and everything.
But were you always like that? Were you always like that?
Always from day. I was born confused. I saw from day dot. I saw what didn't know all the intricacies.
You thought through it all.
Very, very wrong going on. Literally, why did you leave me here? Come and get me. I'd say most of my life was a bit of maverick most of the time, but then there was that voice from societal upbringing of be a good girl. So I was the straight A student following the rules, doing what they expected. But then at the same time, they're going, tuck your shirt in. And I'm going, fuck you. I don't want to tuck my shirt in, right? And, because you told me to tuck my shirt in, I'm not tucking my shirt in, right? Or you have to wear this color shirt, jumper to school or whatever, or jacket. And I'm like, well, I'm going to wear this color, right? Because you told me to do that. So there was always that, but I can remember a time where I did comply, and that was when my daughter was born, because I got pulled into the medical system, and fear is a massive thing that will make you do things out of obligation or out of compliance. You will comply because you are so afraid, right? So first of all, they label you, oh, you've got a high-risk pregnancy. Oh, you've got oh, no, you can't have a natural birth. You're going to have this. And, oh, look, you're at risk of this, so you need to take this medicine while you're pregnant. And you've got to come every week and we're going to monitor you. And I got pulled into that system so quickly and was so full of fear
during the pregnancy with my daughter, because I'd lost a pregnancy before that, and that by the time she was born, I got talked into immunizing her. Okay. And I literally was one of those parents, me and my ex-husband were those parents that were like, you can't come and visit us in the first 6 weeks unless you've had your whooping cough jab. Okay. Yeah. We were one of those. Okay. And do you understand how, and I am not that person. I'm not that kind of person. And yet the fear pulled me into that. So I have faith in people who did. I have faith. I have faith in people. Because at some point in your life, you might think that was the right thing to do, but until you have more information and you understand and you get pulled out of that and go, wow, but I remember I wasn't happy with any of it, all right? I remember because from the beginning, I always knew there was something up with those jabs, right? All the time. I remember when I worked for the government and they tried to make me have a flu jab and I was like, no, something not right about this, right? But it was almost like, so as you know, in Australia, they won't give you say government funding, like family tax benefit, right? They won't give it to you unless your child's jabbed, right? And it's so that's the kind of holding you, like, we've got your money here. We know that's going to help you buy your groceries. Do you want to feed your kids or what? Because if you do want to feed your kids, then get them jabbed, right? And so there's so many families who there's this moral dilemma because they don't want to do that thing, but they will do it out of obligation to the authorities.
Yeah,
in order to.
So they also hit you with, oh, you're not a bad mother, are you? You don't want to hurt your child. They really use that shame thing, don't they? It's all about, well, if you don't do it, what we're saying.
And it was a big
something
thing.
Goes wrong,
yeah.
Right? We're going to point the finger at you.
Yeah, that was a big thing. There was a lot of stuff going around. I remember when my daughter was born about whooping cough, and on social media in my circles, there was like all the concerned mothers about the whooping cough, and and it was like, you got to just do it. Otherwise, you're one of these parents who just lets their kid die from whooping cough. Who are you? What kind of a pariah are you to do that to your child? And yet there was this part of me that was like, man, I just want to be one of those Steiner parents that, that don't get their kids jabbed and they're playing in mud. And, and now look what's happened. My daughter, I remember it was her 18-month booster. I pretty much think that was the one that kind of really affected her quite considerably. But then again, they all did, because they had me when she was born. When she was in my stomach, when they had me, with all the stuff they were throwing at me, all the trauma, all the ultrasounds that they were telling me to come and get that I didn't need to get, all of that would have impacted her. And she's got autism now, so it's a battle, so this whole obligation thing is what's keeping us stuck in our ways. And yet there is this higher metaphysical reason for it, I believe, because it's part of the realm of duality, It's the thing that's rubbing you up the wrong way to make you decide, what are you going to do? You're going to keep towing the line, or are you going to go your own way and follow your soul's journey? And what's, breaking free of that is a massive thing. Even, we could talk about divorce as well. Ending relationships is people stay in relationships because of obligations, because it's the right thing to do. And they will stick with something that's completely toxic, even because it's obligation, right?
Yeah. And a lot of the time it's not even social obligation, it's economic, right? Well, if you split up, what do we do with all the money? Got all this stuff together, and let's just stay together. For what? For what reason? Where does that end up? This is your life. We see that a lot. And, I think it probably happens a lot with men a lot more than we think. Because especially in Australia, right? If you've got children and you just say your partner, the mother is, doesn't like you very much. If you leave, you can literally never see your kids again. If you're the father, you won't get custody in Australia if the mother's not deemed unsuitable.
I didn't do that. Yeah, I couldn't do that. I had lawyers telling me, you can get full custody. This is the system, you can get full custody. We can do that. We can screw them over. And I'm just like, nah, not doing that. So I'm probably a very rare person, but yeah, I know. And this is, I know people who are staying in the most loveless, horrible marriages, and they're very, very, very unhappy. They're waiting for their youngest to turn 18.
Yep.
Yep, it's really sad. The poor fathers who are, yeah.
It is, and it's just one of those things, right? Because you just never know, is it better to, should I stay or should I go? It's that question, right? Is it better to leave and have less, maybe less time, but be more of yourself? Or is it better to just give more time, but be less of yourself? It's, as parents, we're also, indoctrinated, right? That it's all about time, how much time you spend, you've got to spend time. So that's sort of what comes up first, isn't it? And also I guess, with all couples, it's like, well, what if they get remarried and they get remarried to some asshole who then is raising my children? So it's, I guess that's more of an obligation itself. It's a bit of a funny one, that one, as far as obligation, but it's definitely, it's the same kind of thing. We get attached to things because we think it's the right thing to do and it feels, and that's what everyone does, but we don't normally spend time, extrapolating through that and sort of going, well, where's this going to end up? How's it going to finish? Is this really the best thing for me? And just look around, right, at all the broken relationships. And of course, broken relationships normally just, raise broken children, unfortunately. It's just sort of perpetuates.
Absolutely. So this kind of goes into the whole, I don't like being told what to do. That's 100%. I don't like to be told what to do. And most people I know don't like to be told what to do. Some people love it, get the whip out and they love it, right? But this thing about obligation is, to me, the opposite side of that, or the way to get around, like what we were just talking there about, trying to control situations and doing things out of fear of that being taken away, right? That's pretty much what that whole obligation thing is. The opposite of that, and one of the most powerful things I've been doing lately, is surrendering everything. Is just surrendering and allowing the cards to fall where they may, right? Because, and it's not about giving up. It's really not. It actually takes a lot of power and trust to do this. So it's about saying, basically, I can't control other people and their decisions anymore. I can't control what's going to happen to me in court or whatever. I can't control this. And it's, if we can just surrender that up and to the creator, to source, whatever you want to call it, and just allow life to flow. And as long as we're following our truth, when we do surrender, these miracles seem to happen. It's only when we're trying to control things down to the nitty-gritty and we're trying to make sure that we get our way, and it should be like this, and it should be, a certain way so that it can have this outcome. When we let go of that and we just surrender, and we say, okay, well, I have to be okay with whatever the outcome is, it's pretty miraculous what ends up happening, because it always does work out in the end, even if we think it doesn't. So, that's sort of just what you were talking about with the parenting things. It reminded me of that, because sometimes someone following their truth, which is to break up a marriage, might seem like the worst thing that they, from their family, from everyone, like, what are you doing? Why would you end this? Why would you leave this beautiful big home? Why would you do? But when you see that person following their truth and going, no, I can't do this anymore. My soul is dying. I need to let this go. And all of that other fear, when they actually surrender that, of what's going to happen to the kids and all of that, a lot of amazing, miraculous things can happen. That's what I believe anyway.
I agree.
I've seen it for myself.
I think they tell us, right? Possessions. Possessions possess you. And
they do, yes.
Yeah. And so you let go of the possession.
So true.
Yeah. I mean, they used to, have big ceremonies to get evil spirits out of people, but now those evil spirits that are holding us are mostly physical things that we're choosing to hold.
Yeah.
They're not actually holding us. We're, oh, I need the BMW, so I need to work 70 hours a week, so I make enough money so I can pay it. I mean, because God forbid I go down to a Commodore. I mean, what would people think of me? Oh my God. And it's all this, and
a Commodore.
And it literally possesses. All right. And right, possession is 9/10 of the law as well, right?
Yeah, wow. I know. Wow, that's crazy, isn't it?
It is.
So what do you think? I was going to say something about possessions, because that's pretty, I knew the word possessions, to possess and all of that sort of stuff, about it's possessing you and all of those things. It always keeps coming down to the same thing about simplifying everything. It just seems to be the key for everything now these days, doesn't it? It's like simplifying things, simplifying your life, learning to go within and trusting, surrendering things, and sort of floating along. Children are probably the biggest obligation that there is. And when you have kids, that's the thing that sort of puts the fear into you, because if they're coming after the kids, it's like, oh no, like you'd be free. So many people I know, they go like, I'd be free if I just didn't have kids. I'd be out there protesting, but I've got kids. So it's always this thing that keeps us tied down, the thing that keeps us stuck in possessions, the thing that we feel as though we don't want to shame the kids by having a bad job. We want to make sure that we've got a good job for them and to provide and all of that. But one of the best things you can do, I think, is to really live, or to experience like what I did. I mean, it was only a few days, but that whole thing of like simplifying and living off grid for a bit and just having nothing and realizing you don't need much. That's a pretty powerful experience, and to work towards living like that is a pretty powerful experience. I'm in the process. I'm in the next 2 months to just completely get rid of old stuff. Like I'm just going to get a big skip, just throw it. I don't care anymore. I'm just chucking the past, chucking it out.
Yeah. So we're moving at the moment, and this, it seems I've heard this a lot. A lot of people are moving, but a lot of people are just getting rid of stuff, right? Just throwing stuff out. And, we sort of got to this house 3 years ago. And, back then it was like, just bring everything, right? Just chuck it all in boxes and we'll sort it out when we get to the new house. Just bring everything. And this time it's like, take nothing. What do we want to take? Okay, we want to take that. Okay. And it's literally, like you said, everything else is, anything worthwhile we're going to sell. The rest is going to the salvos or going to the tip. And it's
I'm basically doing that. I'm just
it's amazing how things that you thought a couple of years ago, this is so important, it's just like, it's nothing. Get it out, right?
Put something in storage for a year, and see if you don't think about it, you don't need it.
Yeah. And this is the thing, once you throw out all this stuff, you 6 months later, you can't remember what you threw out. Who knows, right? And so I'm downsizing into a bus. So literally I can't take any furniture. I
love that.
Yeah. So like pretty much everything that I own is going to be in a bus. I thought about getting, a container or a storage thing. And it's like, well, if I go traveling for a year, exactly, when I come back, it's going to be like a shed full of stuff I don't even know what it is. And it's like, well, just take it, right?
I know.
Lighten the load.
Exactly.
Because I always think about these, these quests, and especially I do it a lot in like video games. And, in video games, people aren't carrying around all these possessions, right? Most of them are fighting. You have like your sword or your armor or whatever. And you only get things when you need them. Like you do a quest, right, in these things, and it's like you find something that you need and then you use it and it's gone. Right. And then you get the next thing that you need and you use it and it's gone. And that's, I think, really how we're sort of supposed to live, right? We're supposed to just have these things at the time when we need them. But we spend so much time collecting all this stuff just in case and to impress people we don't know. And we just end up being possessed by it. And that stops people, traveling, right? It's like
Absolutely.
you want to go traveling, if you're at that age and you want to start traveling the world for your retirement or whatever, what are you going to do? You're going to sell everything you own, or you're going to pay for it to go into storage, or you're going to, rent it out and spend all your time traveling, worrying about your house. Oh my God, are they trashing it? Because that's what we mean by possession, right? Like you're out traveling the world and you're like, oh, what's happening to my big investment? And it's possessing you. It's still there. It's still in your brain. But if you just go, oh, let's travel.
Absolutely.
Sell everything, buy a plane ticket or buy a bus and let's go. Then, in 6 months, you won't even remember having a house. You'll be just having too much fun.
Exactly. I just think that's brilliant. Yeah. And look, when you, if I could just walk away from everything that I own, I would be a very happy person. I just sit there and I think about it all the time now. That whole thing with, you said you're going to go live in a bus. So, I met one of the guys I interviewed. He just bought a bus, like all decked out like a little tiny home. And I just said, how do you do it? And then I thought about it, and it's like, and it was so neat and tidy. And I was just like, wow, he's really done it. Because he'd have to just have the very basics, and you'd just have to have, and that's what they used to have. This is the thing. It's like in years gone by, before fast fashion, the fast fashion, the whole notion of like, think they're just churning out T-shirts. Everyone's got like 50 T-shirts and 30 jeans and, multiple things, and it's all made out of jersey fabric, and it's just cheap and nasty. But, but everybody had like their Sunday best, and then they had like a couple of other changes of clothes, and that was it. But it was made at high quality, and they had one pair of shoes or maybe two pairs of shoes. And now it's just, everything is just so fast. I don't know how we got to this topic, but basically it goes down to the whole notion of possession and simplification and simplifying everything. What's tying us to things and to the obligation to do stuff is stuff. And that's what we have to let go of. And here she comes again. Okay, not on the camera. Off you go. Stay there. Uh-oh, she's coming. Hang on. You'll still hear me. I just don't want her to come on the camera. Okay, off you go.
Yeah.
I'm back. She's just wandering in, wandering out. Okay. Yeah. So, I think that everybody has gone through this massive, they call it the awakening, and really what it is that we all went through this quarantine. We all went through this period of time. Basically, if we can learn to live without stuff, it is the most freeing thing ever. It's the most freeing feeling. And what are you left with? And those that don't feel it, and I've noticed this, that a lot of people who have come from trauma, they tend to, because about hoarding and holding on, the hoarding things, that's actually a trauma. That they surround themselves with things because they're too scared to look at the trauma that they've suffered.
Yeah. And
they accumulate things and they start buying stuff. And that ties them into the system, and it ties them into, following certain things, jobs maybe to keep those possessions, and staying obligated to staying in a house they probably don't like or don't want to be in. I've seen this manifest in such a way that, that it really does possess them in the end. I've seen people who won't leave an apartment or a city that they don't want to live in because all of their stuff, they don't know how to move their stuff because they're so stuck in their possessions. And, and I think that these are the things that we're untying. So this period of time, this is what I was saying, is that whole quarantine period was us facing ourselves and what is important and what's not. What happens when I have this job that I can't stand, but I need, and they're making me do something I don't want to do. Do I need this stuff now? If we can just get to that superpower of going, well, you know what, I don't need anything and I'll be okay. Then that's, and this is why I'm sharing on my channel things that seem very random, but they do have a logic to them. So how to make pemmican, for example, or how to, like survival stuff, things that have nothing to do with talking about forever foods and all of that. Because if you had like Campbell, you could literally save so much pantry space if you just had some, what is it, portable soup and little pemmican and hardtack, and you just had that in your cupboard, right? And you could travel lightly, and this is what they would have done, because you were never tied down or obliged to anything or anyone. And if you can do that sort of self-survival stuff, that act of sovereignty where you're not relying on the state, for example, that's another topic. Holy cow, I can go on about this forever. Do you know, I'd say that right now in our society, those people who are the most reliant on the state are probably the ones that are obligated to follow the rules more than anyone else right now. What do you think about that?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. I'm waiting for the announcement, when they say, if you want to get the dole and all these different payments, where's the certificate? And this is the thing. And I think they have been giving people bonuses and stuff for getting, the juice, or getting their kids the juice.
It's medical apartheid. Yeah.
And also they get, they can go swimming and stuff, right? We can't. And that's
exactly. Yeah. Well, we've experienced some discrimination because my daughter has autism. So what they do in Australia, those of you who are watching who are not in Australia, is they have this system called the NDIS, which is National Disabilities Insurance Scheme. And it's basically saying, well, if you've got a disability and you can prove it to us, the government, this government agency, we will give you money to pay for anything you need that's going to help you with your therapies, right? And so autism is one of those things that they will fund and give you lots of money, okay? I'm talking like 5 figures a year to pay for therapies, okay? Because per hour, it's like, $190 an hour to pay a therapist for whatever therapy you're doing, and up, more than that. And we had that. So when my daughter got diagnosed, we had that. And I was, doing the speech therapy and all of that stuff. And then the agency starts discriminating against us because I didn't have the jab. So, and they're not allowed to do this, but they will say, we're not visiting families who where the parents are not jabbed because you're putting the rest of our clients at risk. And well, hang on a minute, you've had the jab and you're visiting lots of people. I'm staying home, and so I'm the risk. I don't quite understand how that works, right? Yeah, I'm the risk. So there was a lot of discrimination. So what I decided was, you know what, fuck this. Fuck you and your funding, right? I basically contacted NDIS and I said, excuse me, can you take me off your books? And they were like, what? And I was like, I don't want your money. And they were like, say what? We've never had this before. You're giving back our money? Yep. I don't want your money. So I disconnected from that. And why was that? Because that's a contract with the government that I don't want and I don't need. And I don't want to be part of their system because they were making me feel obliged to do things I did not want to do that were going against my morals to get the funding that helps my daughter. And that's the thing. They dangle the carrot And they go, if you want this for your child, how much do you love your child? How much do you love them? Because if you want it, we're going to do. And I could see the writing on the wall. I was like, right, they're going to start pulling in they're going to start doing things like reporting parents who are not vaccinated. They're going to start doing all of this and theirs. I saw the writing on the wall. I'm like, right, well, I'm not even going to be part of that system. And it's costing me a mint, but I don't care. I'm doing it by myself, right? And it doesn't matter.
Yeah, well, that's what sovereignty is, right? It's being responsible for yourself. You're not standing on your own 2 feet if you're running around asking for handouts. You just, I mean, we're the only society that we know of that gets given free money for doing nothing, and you can see we're seeing now what it creates, right? All these individuals,
the welfare state,
currently over 18, clearly not mature, clearly not adults, and they're just running around screaming at it. They're literally still children in sandpits, like, you stole my toy. And this is what you get, right? When you're right.
This was the plan from the Fabian Society from a long time ago, right? So if you know anything about Huxley and Fabian Society and all of that, and that was the Labor Party in Australia and the UK. So this has been the plan, and they always touted the welfare state. So this has been the plan all along, is to make a whole bunch of adults that were like children, reliant on the state. Because when you get them reliant, then you're obliged to do, like, how many of us have lived with our parents? We didn't want it. We wanted to go do whatever we wanted. And our parents are like, no, you want to live here? You've got to do this. And you're like, fuck, right? So you do it out of obligation. And some people would say out of respect, obviously out of respect for your parents. But that's where that comes from, that whole notion of a nanny state and this whole... Yeah. Sorry, I keep talking over the top of you because I get all excited.
And this is what happens. Like, people, believe the state, they comply, they do all this stuff, and then they, like you said, they go out and then they police everyone else, and then they become the little mini governments, and their household becomes a mini government, and they then use the shame and all this stuff on their kids, just to perpetuate the cycle. So, I mean, I think, we've just got to really just stop and take a look around it, and who are we obliged to, and where's it going to lead you? If you keep going back to work for the next 20 years and going to your Christmas party that you hate, where are you going to be in 20 years? If you stop doing that, where are you going to be in 20 years or 5 years? And people I don't think about that, and it's the trust thing. I think, people just need to trust themselves, trust that. Because, we're used to this government, right? And a lot of people think, government is like God, right? That's what's looking after them, but it's turned on them, right? And so they don't have faith in anything anymore, so especially themselves. So obligation to yourself, I think, and make sure you're not saying things that you don't want to do. And if someone tells you what to do, give them the finger. It's like all these shutdowns, like, because I went through a drive-through to get some cigarettes, and they're like, "Are you
what? You drive-through with cigarettes?"
Yeah. What?
Hey, what? How did you drive-through with cigarettes? Is that at the bottle?
Like the bottle shop.
Oh, okay, right, yeah.
So at the bottle shop, and and the guy's like, "Oh, have you got your V pass or whatever it is?" And I just went, "You're joking, right?" He went, "No, we can't serve anyone unless they've got a pass." And I just laughed at him and went, "Yeah, good luck." And I literally, this drive-through was connected to the same building as a servo. And I went, okay. And I literally drove around, parked in front of the servo, walked in with nothing on my face, and bought it there and went, like, you guys are idiots. And this is the whole thing. But if they're going to do that, that's what you do. You just go, well, I'm going to go somewhere else, or I'm going to do it my way. It's like
with your feet.
Yeah, if they don't, want us to go to clubs and nightclubs, you got to think, well, what do I get from a club or nightclub? I go there, I waste my time. Everyone's drunk. I fill myself with poison. Is that a bad thing? They're telling you can't go there, because that's just the whole thing, right? Where we are is everyone thinks it's bad, but I agree with you. I think this is a wake up call, right? You can look at it whichever way you want.
Yeah, it's also time for people to get out of the medical system. So what I've noticed is it's almost like two worlds. So I've got a friend whose father has lung cancer after the second jab, and he will even say it himself that it happened as soon as he got the second jab. It activated this cancer in his lungs, and it's happening a lot. Okay. But she said, I mean, she has to take him to the hospital, like, because he wanted to get some scans and stuff. And she's just like, it's like another world. And imagine all the people who are caught into that medical industrial complex. They're reliant on the pharmaceuticals, they're reliant on the regular scans, and they're being told by the system, which is, it's not necessary. I'm sorry, it's not, unless you've got a broken leg. It's pulling them into this system that's making them be obliged to keep following their sort of their agenda for your health, right? And so what's happening now is, like, if you don't wear a mask, you can't come into the hospital. If you don't wear a mask, if you don't do this, if you don't follow our rules, we can't operate on you unless you've had a jab, right? We can't operate all of these things, right? That's got to be a good thing. It's going to pull you out of that system, because that's just a death trap right there, and it's making people question, well, what is this system? What is this? The whole stress of going to see a doctor now. I don't think I've seen a doctor for 2 years. I swear to God.
Yeah.
2 years. Actually, I did see one during the reprieve who is a very open-minded doctor, and I said to him, can you explain to me about viruses? Just tell me. Can you catch a virus from, like, your breath? He goes, no. I said, it doesn't work like that, does it? He goes, no. I said, do these masks work? No, they don't work. So, but that was for another thing, that doctor. So it wasn't like I wasn't sick, but we've got to pull away from these systems, because that is the thing that's tying us into these contracts and these obligations that are not good for us and are pulling us away from our soul's purpose. That's my opinion anyway.
I agree. I've obviously got issues with my arm, right? Drove my car into a tree. And obviously I went to the hospital after that because, I had a bit of trauma, but then they put me into hand therapy, and they booked me into a specialist who was, I think, a nerve specialist, and these other things. And so the hand therapy I went for a few times, and, after, I'm thinking, this is, they were useless, right? They just, bend your hand around. But then I got a call, this was last year, and it's like, COVID, right? So no one can come into the hospital. So this week's appointment for your hand therapy, it's going to be a phone call. And I went, are you serious? A phone call? And they're like, yeah. And I went, for hand therapy? Yeah. And I went, okay. And so I got the call, and I was just like, what are you doing? And the guy just went, yeah, I just have to call. And so this happened on the third time. I just went, look, take me off your books. Don't ever call me again. You guys, you have no idea about medicine. You don't know what you're doing. This is ridiculous. Go away. And I never went back. The nerve specialist cancelled 3 times on me. Each time it was another month to get back in. And then the last time I actually made the appointment, tried to go into the hospital, and it just happened to be one of the weeks where they had mask mandates in here, because we hadn't had that many in WA, and they wouldn't let me in. And so I was just like, well, if you think that me coming in can affect someone, you clearly don't know what a virus is. So you're clearly not a doctor or a health professional. So I cancelled that. And then there was I went to a chiropractor for a bit, and same thing. They rang me up when I had an appointment. Oh, we're just letting you know you've got to wear a mask in. I went, take me off your books, cancel me, don't ever call me again. And so I've told them all to bugger off. And just the other day I was cleaning out my room, and I found this big bag of pills that they'd given me at the start, like about 5 different boxes. And I'm like, what's all this stuff? And I'd never touched it. I'd literally just threw it in the bin.
Yes.
And, so yeah,
wow.
We've got to take, we've got to see what these people are. If they're seriously saying this stuff is for our health, all this, crap, they don't know anything about health. They don't.
No, they don't.
They don't care about you. So don't waste your time and feel obliged. because this is the other thing, I couldn't drive, and it's like, oh, you've got to come and see us twice a week, and it's like, well, that's literally 2 days pretty much of me trying to get there, and it's like, it's just not worth it. It's just not worth it.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I would.
Oh man, we could keep going on forever and ever.
Yes, I know. How long have we been going?
Medical, no, because the medical system itself and the whole scientific board and everything is all out of obligation for towing the line and keeping up. Like, you've got to follow this because this medical study said this, and so we've got to back that up because of the funding and the obligation to that. It's the whole thing is based on lives, isn't it?
It is.
And yeah,
funding, like you said, and funding, right? Because in the end, that's what it's about. They oblige us, you give us obligation, use their shame if we don't want to do it, and it's all so they can fill their pockets with money. They don't care.
No. It's based on, so how like the scientific formula and all of those sorts of things, like they'll have a theory, right? A scientific theory.
Yep.
And then if some big scientist backs up this thing, right, then everyone goes, oh, well, any future experiments that we do have to back up this guy, because if we don't, then we're not seen as any good in this institution, and we'll lose our funding. And so everybody's obliged to do the thing that the other person has stated as fact.
Yep.
And if that whole thing is based on a formula that's false, like, then, do you know what I'm trying to say here? It's like, it's lie based on lie based on lie, because nobody is trying to question or buck the curve or change the system or anything like that. Nobody is wanting to pull that out. And that's what's happening now with this whole narrative. Nobody wants to be wrong. They have, it's lie on top of lie on top of lie, just backing up the old lie. And now they're wearing 3 masks on their face and a visor, and and they're 3 jabs and 4 jabs and whatever. Yeah. So, but nobody wants to question the elephant in the room, that's not how you catch a virus.
This is, I have issues with this too. Is it's like when, and you might see it often too in your chats. It's like, oh well, my father died of COVID, and everyone's kind of like, oh, and it's like, oh well, we can't, can't say anything. And I just want to say, COVID doesn't exist. You got lied to. You need to go and talk to your medical.
It was a flu.
What the hell is going on? This has nothing to do with us. You were lied to. But everyone, pussyfoots around and but I think that's doing the wrong thing. I think we've got to call this out, because that's more of the shame, right? It's like, we're talking about it, it's like, but my mother died. And it was like, oh, your mother, oh, you lost your mother, oh, poor little you, oh, we won't say anything else because we're obliged to be nice, right? We're just letting that narrative get bigger when we do that. We're just giving ourselves what we don't want. It's
absolutely
madness.
Absolutely. We're really, it comes down to truth, doesn't it? And it comes down to 2 different systems, the Freemason obligation system.
The free system.
Where, you don't talk about you don't talk about that, don't talk about Fight Club. Got to keep the secrets. Or it's the whole notion of pulling away, being sovereign, completely living in truth, and actually saying, I've got nothing to lose. That's the opposite of this, really. It's finding that power and letting go of all of those old things. And if you want to leave your husband or your wife, just do it.
Just do it. Do what Nike does.
Just do it.
Yeah. I used to do it on
just kidding. I'm sorry, guys. Like, but what about my children? Yeah, sorry.
But I mean, realistically, though, don't do it on whim. But realistically, if you are in a situation that's making you unhappy, definitely think about it. Because what energy are you keeping around the house? How are you looking to your children? Would you, it comes to, would you rather be a full version of you? And maybe see your kids not as much, or would you rather see them more and be just a shadow of yourself? Because we all want to, we want to instill our values into our children, and when you're sort of staying, in a relationship just to get along, you don't do that.
No, you don't.
So
Not at all. And you're not living your truth. Absolutely not.
it's not, yeah. And when you
There's so many people
in your
suffering.
40s, so keep that in mind too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, gosh, we could start dissecting relationships and obligation from and, reimagining new 5D relationships
Yeah,
and how, you don't just do things out of obligation in relationships either,
exactly.
That's a big,
I'm not even going to say anything. I will be here next week still talking. That's a very
I know. God, that's another video in itself. Oh gosh.
Wow, we've
So
been going 2 hours,
far out, man.
40 minutes. So
What?
yeah, something like it's
No, we started. No, it was an hour and a half.
hour and a half.
We started at 1/2 the hour.
Oh, we did that.
Yeah.
Changed it. Yeah, an hour and a half. Cool. Well, I might let you go now anyway because your daughter's probably running around looking for you. So, yeah, thank you so much for doing it. That was really good. And if you want to continue the conversation, I'm definitely into it. So let me know when you have unobligated.
Yeah. Yeah, just hit me up. I like spur of the moment things.
Yeah.
So like if you just say, hey, you're free, and we're like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's definitely the way I'm going too. I mean, probably saw me like last year. I was just doing way too much. So this year, I'm just gonna, because that's the obligation.
You are, yeah, you were.
We have this obligation.
You were churning out.
We've got to do stuff. We've got to help people, and we're not doing enough, and that's all obligation too, really. Mainly to ourselves. But if it's not, if it's not beneficial, then so I'm definitely going to cut back a bit and put a bit more time into getting outside, right? Building gardens, doing stuff, because this is my response to the government, right? If they say you can't go shopping, well, I'm like, well, F you, I'm going to go build a garden. Right? That's what you do. You just find another way to get there.
Absolutely.
Indeed.
Great.
All righty. Well, thank you so much.
It's good to talk to you.
Sorry?
It was good to talk to you. It took 4 weeks. I said it was good to talk to you. It took 4 weeks to organise this. My next, I'm still putting poor Martin Ledkey on hold. he's been asking me to do a chat. I've just been, everything's out the window with me.
Yeah, right. He must have been Kelly, Kelly and I were so tired. We were sitting there like falling asleep, and you and Mark were like, that was great. We didn't have to do
me.
You don't talk, never. All right. Well, thank you.
I don't talk.
No, never. Got nothing to say. Yes, thank you so much for your time, JC. If you haven't heard of JC, well, where have you been? But I will leave the link to her channel below, so you can go check out her work. And yeah, we'll hopefully be back in the future sometime. So have an awesome afternoon, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. See you later.
Thanks, JC. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.